Tumi's bare feet kicked up small clouds of dust as he hurried down the narrow, winding road that led to his home on the outskirts of Nakuru, Kenya. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, stretching the outline of the small, humble houses that lined the path. In his hand, he clutched a worn notebook, its pages filled with careful handwriting, evidence of hours spent at school, and even more at home. Tumi's father, a bicycle repairman, worked tirelessly in a small workshop at the end of their street. His hands, calloused from years of labor, moved deftly as he fixed a broken chain for a neighbor's bike. But before we dive deeper into this tale, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss the next exciting chapter. Despite his worn clothes and modest earnings, his face radiated a quiet pride. Tumi's mother, standing beside a small stall outside their home, arranged fresh fruits neatly, her hands moving with a rhythm that spoke of years of experience. "Tumi, you're back," she called out, her voice warm, though tired. Tumi nodded, giving her a wide smile. "Yes, Mama, I'm back," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of excitement that he couldn't contain. He knew his parents worked hard, day and night, to provide for him, and he, in return, worked hard at his studies, knowing that education was his way to a better future. But the school was not always a welcoming place. Kofi and Malik, two boys from wealthier families, made sure of that. They would often taunt Tumi, calling him names, mocking his worn clothes and bare feet. "Hey, Tumi, did you have to sell your shoes to buy a pencil?" Malik would sneer. Kofi would laugh, his voice sharp, echoing across the schoolyard. Tumi, however, always kept his head down, focusing on his studies, dreaming of the day when he could prove them wrong. One day, the head teacher called Tumi into her office. She was a stern woman with kind eyes, known for recognizing talent where others saw none. Tumi entered nervously, unsure of why he had been summoned. The head teacher smiled gently and said, "Tumi, I have good news. You've been selected to compete for a scholarship to a prestigious school in Nairobi. This is a chance that could change your life." Tumi's heart leapt. A scholarship? To a school in Nairobi? He could hardly believe his ears. "Thank you, madam," he stammered, his mind already racing with possibilities. This was his chance to prove himself, to show that he was more than just a poor boy from Nakuru. But not everyone was pleased. Kofi and Malik, overhearing the news, felt a sting of jealousy. They had always considered themselves better than Tumi, purely because of their family wealth. The thought of Tumi attending a prestigious school in Nairobi made their blood boil. "We can't let him get away with this," Malik muttered to Kofi as they walked home that day. "He's nothing. We need to remind him of that." Kofi nodded, his face twisted in a scowl. "Let's teach him a lesson he won't forget," he replied. They began to plot, determined to ruin Tumi's chance at the scholarship. They enlisted Zuri, Tumi's only friend, pretending to seek her help in organizing a surprise celebration for him. Zuri, unaware of their true intentions, reluctantly agreed, thinking they had finally realized the value of friendship. Meanwhile, Tumi, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, began preparing for the exam with renewed vigor, his eyes set firmly on the future. The day of the celebration approached, and Tumi felt a mixture of confusion and joy. It was rare for anyone to acknowledge his hard work, let alone Kofi and Malik. Zuri had approached him with a bright smile, saying, "They want to make peace, Tumi. They think you deserve recognition for your achievements." Tumi, ever trusting, agreed to meet them near the Mara River after school. When the day came, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the riverbanks. Tumi walked alongside Zuri, his heart filled with cautious hope. As they neared the meeting spot, he could see Kofi and Malik waiting, their faces unreadable. A small part of him doubted their sincerity, but he pushed the thought away. Perhaps they had truly changed. "Welcome, Tumi," Kofi called out, forcing a smile. "We wanted to apologize for everything and give you a proper celebration." Malik nodded in agreement, gesturing toward a blanket laid out with some food and drinks. Tumi hesitated for a moment, sensing a strange tension in the air, but Zuri nudged him gently. "It's okay, Tumi. I'm here," she whispered, her voice filled with encouragement. But just as he stepped forward, Kofi's smile turned into a sneer. "Or maybe," he continued, "you don't deserve anything at all." With a sudden violent shove, Malik pushed Tumi toward the riverbank. Tumi stumbled, his arms flailing as he tried to keep his balance, but it was too late. He tumbled down the steep embankment, falling toward the rushing waters below. For a moment, everything was a blur. The world spun as Toomey hit the water with a splash. The cold shock of the river sent panic racing through his veins, and he struggled to stay afloat. His hands searched desperately for something to grab onto, and finally, his fingers found a rock jutting out of the water. He clung to it with all his strength, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Above him, he could hear Kofi and Malik laughing, their voices cruel and triumphant. "Help!" Toomey shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the roar of the river. He looked up and saw Zuri's face, stricken with horror and regret. She turned and fled, tears streaming down her cheeks, realizing too late the true nature of Kofi and Malik's plan. The river surged around Toomey, cold and relentless, its currents tugging at his legs. His fingers ached from gripping the rock, and his arms began to tremble with fatigue. He knew he couldn't hold on much longer. Every second felt like an eternity as he fought against the river's pull. His mind raced with thoughts of his parents, his dreams, and the cruel laughter of Kofi and Malik still echoing in his ears. As darkness began to fall, Toomey's strength started to wane. His fingers slipped and he was pulled deeper into the river. He kicked desperately, trying to stay above water, but his body was growing tired. Just as he felt himself being dragged under, he spotted a figure on the riverbank. A fisherman was running toward him, shouting something that Toomey couldn't quite hear over the rushing water. With a burst of adrenaline, Toomey kicked harder, reaching his arms toward the fisherman. The man threw out a long branch, shouting, "Grab it, boy! Hold on!" Toomey's fingers closed around the branch, and he felt a strong tug as the fisherman began to pull him toward the shore. Inch by inch, he was dragged from the clutches of the river until finally, he was lying on the muddy bank, coughing and gasping for air. "Are you all right, son?" the fisherman asked, his voice full of concern. Toomey nodded weakly, unable to speak. The fisherman helped him to his feet, guiding him back toward his small boat. "Let's get you to a clinic," he said. "You've had a rough day." As the boat made its way down the river, Toomey felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. His thoughts were a blur, his body aching from the ordeal. Yet, deep within him, a spark of determination began to burn brighter. He would not let this defeat him. Not Kofi, not Malik, not the river itself. He would survive and he would overcome. Arriving at a small riverside clinic, Toomey was quickly attended to by the nurses. The fisherman, seeing Toomey in safe hands, quietly left, but not before telling them where he had found the boy. Toomey's parents arrived soon after, their faces etched with worry and fear. When they saw him, safe though bruised, relief flooded their expressions. As Toomey lay in the clinic bed that night, his body sore but his spirit unbroken, he vowed to himself that no matter what came next, he would keep moving forward. This was only the beginning of his journey, and he would not let anyone or anything stand in his way. The days in the clinic passed slowly for Toomey. His body ached with every movement, but the pain in his heart was sharper. The betrayal by Zuri, his only friend, cut deeper than any physical wound. Yet each day his resolve grew stronger. The nurses whispered about his resilience, admiring the quiet determination in his eyes. His parents visited every day, bringing him fresh fruits from the market and stories of their hopes for his future. Their presence, their unwavering belief in him, kept him focused. One afternoon, the fisherman who had saved him returned to check on Toomey. He was a tall, lean man with a kind face and weathered hands that told the story of a life spent on the water. "I heard you're a fighter," he said with a smile. Toomey nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," he replied softly, "for saving me." The fisherman waved a hand dismissively. "Anyone would have done the same," he said. "But remember, boy, the river may be strong, but those who learn to swim against the current become stronger." His words lingered in Toomey's mind long after he had left. By the end of the week, Toomey was well enough to return home. As they walked back, his father put a hand on his shoulder. "You're brave, Toomey," he said quietly. "But remember, bravery is not just surviving the storm. It's how you grow after it." Toomey nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the scholarship exam. The incident by the river had only deepened his determination to prove himself. Back at school, the atmosphere had changed. Whispers followed Toomey through the hallways, and students glanced at him with a mix of awe and curiosity. The news of the incident had spread quickly, and while some admired Toomey for his courage, others were more interested in the drama involving Kofi and Malik. The two boys had been called into the head teacher's office, but the consequences they faced were minimal, thanks to their wealthy and influential families. For a few days, Kofi and Malik kept a low profile, their faces tight with anger and frustration. But soon they were back to their usual selves, strutting through the schoolyard, convinced that their status had saved them once again. They smirked at Toomey from a distance, but something in their eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. They knew he had survived more than they had ever imagined. Toomey, for his part, focused on his studies with renewed intensity. He had little time to dwell on what had happened. He had an exam to prepare for, a chance to change his life, to go to the prestigious school in Nairobi. Every day, he pored over his books, memorizing formulas, practicing writing and reciting facts. He knew he couldn't afford to lose focus, not now. But the injustice still lingered. One afternoon, as he sat under a tree, revising for the scholarship exam, Zuri approached him cautiously. "Toomey, I'm so sorry," she began, her voice trembling. I didn't realize what they were planning." Toomey looked up, his expression calm but distant. "Why did you help them?" he asked quietly. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. I thought they had changed, that they wanted to be friends. I didn't mean for you to get hurt." Toomey nodded slowly, trying to understand. "We all make mistakes, Zuri. But now I have no time for regrets," he replied. "I have to focus. I have to succeed." Zuri nodded, wiping her tears. "If there's anything I can do to help," she trailed off, unsure of what more she could say. Toomey gave a small, forgiving smile. "Just let me study in peace." And so he did. Days turned into nights as Toomey buried himself in his books, the memory of the river still fresh, but now serving as fuel for his ambition. The scholarship exam was approaching fast, and Toomey knew that he had to give it his all. The river had tried to take him, but he had emerged stronger, more determined than ever to seize his chance and create a future that no one could take from him. The day of the scholarship exam arrived, and Toomey felt a surge of adrenaline as he entered the examination hall. The room was filled with bright students from different schools, all competing for the same coveted opportunity. The head teacher smiled encouragingly as she handed out the exam papers. "Remember," she said softly to Toomey, "this is just another step on your journey." Toomey nodded, gripping his pencil tightly. The questions were challenging, but he had prepared well. Hours flew by as he worked diligently, his mind sharp and focused. When he finally put down his pencil, he felt a quiet confidence that he had done his best. A week later, the results were announced. Toomey had won the scholarship. His heart swelled with pride as the head teacher congratulated him. It was the moment he had dreamed of, a chance to study in Nairobi, to break free from the chains of poverty. But his joy was short-lived. On his first day at the prestigious school, Toomey felt the weight of unfamiliar eyes upon him. The halls were grander, the students dressed in fine uniforms, their shoes polished to a shine. Toomey, in his simple clothes and worn-out shoes, felt like an outsider. As he walked through the bustling corridors, he heard a familiar sneer. "Look who's here," Malik drawled, leaning against the wall with a smug smile. Kofi stood beside him, his arms crossed. "The river rat survived," Kofi added with a chuckle. Toomey's heart sank. He hadn't expected them to be here, not at this new place where he had hoped to start fresh. The days that followed were not easy. Kofi and Malik continued their harassment, though now in subtler ways. They would whisper behind his back, spread rumors, and exclude him from group activities. They mocked his accent, his clothes, his very presence. The other students, unsure of how to act, often avoided him. Yet Toomey refused to let their words and actions defeat him. He focused on his studies, determined to excel despite the hostility. He found solace in the library, spending hours reading, learning, and growing. Occasionally, he would catch the eye of a kind student or a teacher who saw beyond his appearance, but they were few and far between. Still, Toomey held on to his resolve. He knew that this was another challenge, another test of his strength. One day, while studying in the quiet corner of the library, Toomey overheard a conversation between two teachers. "Kofi and Malik are struggling," one of them said. "If they don't improve, they might not pass this year." Toomey felt a mix of emotions. He remembered their cruelty, their attempt to hurt him, but he also saw an opportunity to expose their weaknesses. Yet, as he sat there, a thought struck him. He could use this information to his advantage, but would that make him any better than them? He decided against it. Toomey believed that his success should come from his merit, not from someone else's failure. Instead, he continued with his studies, letting his actions speak louder than words. Later that week, Zuri reappeared in his life. She had come to Nairobi with her family and sought him out at the new school. "Tumi, I'm here to make things right," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I want to help you. I know I betrayed you before, but I've learned from my mistakes." Tumi looked at her carefully, weighing her words. "Why now?" he asked. "Why do you want to help me?" Zuri sighed. "Because I realized I was wrong, and because you didn't deserve any of what happened. I want to support you if you'll let me." Tumi nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "I'll give you a chance. But you have to prove you mean it." Zuri smiled, relieved. "I will," she promised. From that day, Zuri began to assist Tumi with his studies and his social life at the new school, helping him navigate the complexities of the environment and gradually earning back his trust. As weeks passed, Tumi noticed subtle changes. While Kofi and Malik continued to make his life difficult, the pressure was shifting. Some students began to see his dedication and determination. A few even started to reach out, asking him for help with their studies. And slowly, the narrative around Tumi began to change. He was no longer just the poor boy from Nakuru, but someone with a sharp mind and an unwavering spirit. But the fragile peace didn't last long. One afternoon, Tumi was called to the head teacher's office. There had been an accident, a car crash involving Kofi and Malik. The head teacher's expression was grim. "Tumi, they've been taken to the hospital and they need all the help they can get. I heard you've been studying medicine. Can you assist the doctors in any way?" Tumi felt his heart skip a beat. The boys who had caused him so much pain now lay injured and vulnerable, and fate had brought them back into his life in the most unexpected way. He knew he had a choice to make, a choice that would test every part of his character. The air outside the hospital was thick with tension as Tumi arrived. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside him. The memory of what Kofi and Malik had done was still fresh, their sneers and cruel laughter echoing in his mind. Yet here he was, summoned by fate to face them again, but this time in a much different context. Inside, the smell of antiseptic filled the corridors, and the sound of hurried footsteps and hushed voices made Tumi's heart race. He was met by Dr. Nyaga, a senior physician who had heard of Tumi's interest in medicine. "Tumi, I know this must be difficult for you, doctor," Nyaga began, her eyes kind but firm. "But Kofi and Malik are in critical condition. We need all the help we can get, even from a student like you." Tumi nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm here to help," he replied, his voice steady, though his heart felt heavy. He followed Dr. Nyaga to the emergency room where he saw Kofi and Malik on stretchers, pale and motionless. Their faces were bruised, and there were cuts and scrapes on their arms and legs. He couldn't help but feel a pang of pity, despite everything they had put him through. For a moment he hesitated. Could he really help them? Should he? But then he remembered his father's words. Bravery is not just surviving the storm, it's how you grow after it. This was his storm, and he had to decide how he would emerge from it. "Doctor," he said, stepping forward, "tell me what to do." "Doctor." Nyaga nodded, a faint smile of approval on her lips. "We need to stabilize them first. Here, assist me with the IV fluids and monitor their vitals." Tumi quickly set to work, his hands steady, his mind focused. As he moved between the patients, he realized that this was more than just a test of his skills. It was a test of his character. Minutes turned into hours, and slowly, Kofi and Malik's conditions began to stabilize. Tumi's presence did not go unnoticed by the hospital staff. Nurses whispered about the young student who had come to help, despite the history he shared with the boys. Even the doctors seemed impressed by his calm demeanor and willingness to assist. When the worst was over, Tumi stood back, watching as the medical team took over. "Doctor." Nyaga placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did well, Tumi," she said quietly. "Very well. You made a difficult choice today, one that many adults would struggle with." Tumi nodded, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over him. "Thank you, doctor," he replied. But he knew this wasn't over. Kofi and Malik were still unconscious, and he wasn't sure what would happen when they woke up. He only knew that he had done what he felt was right, and that was enough for now. A few days later, Kofi and Malik began to regain consciousness. Tumi had continued to visit the hospital, partly out of concern for his own conscience, and partly because he felt a strange pull, a need to see this chapter of their story through to the end. When he arrived that morning, he found Zuri waiting in the hallway. "They're awake," she said softly, "and asking to see you." Tumi hesitated, unsure of what to expect. Would they be grateful, angry, Apologetic? He nodded and made his way to their room. Inside, he found the two boys lying in their beds, looking weak and tired, their faces marked with fresh scars. Kofi was the first to speak, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Why did you do it to me? Why did you help us?" His eyes were filled with confusion, perhaps even a hint of guilt. Malik, too, looked at Tumi with a mixture of bewilderment and regret. Tumi took a deep breath. "Because it was the right thing to do," he replied simply. "I've had my share of hardships, but I believe that kindness, even to those who have wronged us, is never wasted." Malik swallowed hard, his eyes glistening with tears. We've been terrible to you," he admitted, his voice breaking. "We thought we were better, but now I see we were wrong." Kofi nodded, his face pale but sincere. "I'm sorry, Tumi. I truly am. I don't know if we can ever make it up to you, but I want to try." Tumi felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He didn't need their apologies to move on, but hearing them brought a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. "I accept your apology," he said quietly. "But more than that, I hope you've learned something from all of this." Kofi and Malik exchanged a look and then both nodded. "We have," Kofi said, his voice firm. "And we want to change. We don't want to be those people anymore." A small smile crept onto Tumi's face. "Good," he replied. "Then use this second chance well. It's not just for you. It's for everyone around you." Over the next few weeks, Kofi and Malik began to show genuine efforts at changing their ways. They reached out to Tumi, not just to thank him, but to seek his guidance on how they could contribute positively to the school and community. Tumi, seeing their sincerity, decided to help them, teaching them how to assist in tutoring younger students, organizing charitable events, and leading by example. Word of their transformation spread, and soon, the school began to see them differently. The story of the river rat who saved his tormentors became a tale of redemption, forgiveness, and the power of kindness. Tumi's life at the school also began to change. More students reached out to him, and he found himself no longer an outsider, but a respected peer. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of belonging and peace. He had passed his test, not just in his studies, but in his heart, and emerged stronger for it. With each passing day, Kofi and Malik made noticeable strides in their behavior. They attended every tutoring session Tumi organized, and they began helping out at local community centers after school. They no longer sought validation through belittling others. Instead, they focused on becoming better versions of themselves. Their transformation did not go unnoticed. Teachers who once saw them as troublemakers began to speak highly of their commitment to change, and their peers started to see them in a new light. Tumi watched this transformation with a mix of satisfaction and quiet pride. He knew that they still had a long way to go, but he could see that their change was sincere. He continued to work with them, encouraging their efforts and showing them how to channel their energy positively. One afternoon, while they were volunteering at a local children's shelter, Malik turned to Tumi with a serious expression. "We owe you everything," he said. "If it weren't for you, I don't know where we would be right now." Kofi nodded in agreement. "You've taught us so much, Tumi. Not just about school or helping others, but about forgiveness and how to be better people. We can never repay you, but we want you to know that we're committed to making this right." Tumi smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "It's not about repayment," he replied. "It's about what you choose to do with the opportunities you're given. I'm glad to see you both choosing the right path." As the weeks turned into months, the bond between Tumi, Kofi, and Malik grew stronger. What had begun as an uneasy truce had turned into a genuine friendship. They laughed together, studied together, and worked side by side to make their school and community better places. The story of their unlikely friendship spread throughout the town, becoming a symbol of hope and change. But Tumi knew his journey was far from over. He had dreams that stretched beyond the borders of Nakuru and even Nairobi. He still wanted to pursue a career in medicine, to help those who needed it most, and he was determined to make that dream a reality. Kofi and Malik, too, had found new purpose. Malik wanted to study social work, while Kofi found a passion for teaching. One day, Tumi received a letter in the mail. The envelope bore the seal of a prestigious university in South Africa. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, unfolding the crisp paper inside. He began to read, his eyes scanning the words quickly. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been awarded a full scholarship to study medicine at our institution." Tumi's heart soared. He had done it. All the struggles, all the hardships, all the sleepless nights had led to this moment. He rushed to find his parents, who were busy at their usual spots, his father at his bicycle shop, his mother arranging fruits at the market stall. He ran to them, waving the letter, and they both looked up, startled. "Mama, Papa, I got the scholarship," he shouted, unable to contain his excitement. His mother dropped the fruit she was holding, rushing to embrace him, tears of joy streaming down her face. His father, always the quiet one, smiled broadly, his eyes shining with pride. "You've made us so proud, Toomey," he said softly. "Go and make the world proud too." That evening, a small celebration was held in their community. Even Kofi and Malik came, bringing their parents who, despite their initial misgivings, had come to respect Toomey deeply. They raised a toast to his success, and for a moment, all their past conflicts seemed like distant memories. Toomey stood up, looking around at the faces of friends, family, and even former foes who had become allies. He spoke with humility and gratitude, thanking everyone who had played a role in his journey. "This isn't just my achievement," he said. "It's all of ours. I carry with me every lesson, every hardship, and every act of kindness. I hope to make you all proud wherever life takes me." As the night wore on, Toomey found himself standing at the edge of the celebration, looking out at the vast night sky, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. He knew his journey was just beginning, but he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. He would carry the lessons of his past, the strength he had gained, and the friendships he had forged into his future. Before leaving Nakuru, Toomey made one last visit to the river where everything had changed. He stood at the bank, staring at the water, remembering the boy he had been and the man he was becoming. He felt no bitterness, no anger, only a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. "Thank you," he whispered, as if speaking to the river itself, and turned back toward the road ahead, knowing that it would lead him to places he had only dreamed of. As he walked away, the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, signaling a new day, a new chapter, and a new beginning for Toomey, a boy from Nakuru who had learned to swim against the current and had emerged stronger on the other side. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on notifications so you won't miss the next exciting chapter.